All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 20th Township Committee meeting. We will now salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
with liberty
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2021 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December of 2020, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Daffis.
Here.
Mr. DeLuca.
I'm here.
Mr. Lembrick.
Here.
Mayor McGehee.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, Common Law of the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Mapewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams.
Here. Yes. Sorry.
Mr. Daffis.
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca.
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick.
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritz, and good evening, everyone. I'll quickly run through our agenda. We have tonight, first, we have a statement that will be read by the Maplewood Senior Advisory Committee regarding Asian American Pacific Islander. We also have a proclamation, which we read by Ms. Adams for Earth Day. We have two employee spotlights this evening. We're excited about that. That is Captain Joey Alvarez and Detective Lieutenant Michael Palmarazzi, or I say Palm. At that point, we'll move on to our first public comment, limited to 3 minutes on agenda items only. We have two ordinances on final. They're related to our capital improvements, which we discussed in the meeting on April 4th, after April 6th, rather, excuse me. Then we have one ordinance on introduction. This is a one related to parking in terms of a driveway. After that, we will move on to reports from departments. We don't have any for this evening, but we will hear from our CFO, Mr. Kaloje, later on. We'll have our administrative reports by our administrator, Mr. Jimes, by our attorney, Mr. Desiderio, and by our clerk, Ms. Fritzen. We'll then have reports from elected officials. We'll hear from Ms. Adams. We'll hear from Mr. DeLuca. We'll hear from Mr. Daffis, and then we'll hear from Mr. Lembrick and myself. We have two discussion items tonight. One is on our municipal budget, which I will lead with collaboration from Mr. Kaloje. And then we have a discussion item regarding police off-duty employment ordinance. Finally, our consent agenda, we have 19 items on the consent agenda here. I'm sorry, 13 items rather, that stem from revenue appropriations to refund of tax overpayments, bills and claims, and awards of several contracts. After that, we'll open up for our second and final public comment on any subject matter, limited to 3 minutes, and then we will adjourn. So that is our agenda for this evening. At this point, I will now yield the floor to hear the statement regarding Asian American Pacific Islanders. Ms. Fritzen, are those individuals on the call?
Mayor, I do see them in the attendee list. We may need to flip them over.
Yes, I see they say I am present. So
let me know who to bring over.
Ms. Larrier, Cindy Larrier.
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Larrier, how are you? You're on mute, so let's have a reboot.
Hello.
There you are. No worries. Good evening.
Good evening to everyone. The Maplewood Senior Advisory Committee is saddened and disturbed by the continued acts of violence against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community in America. While we are unfortunately not surprised due to the proliferation of anti-Asian rhetoric and scapegoating throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we are deeply dismayed by the lack of respect and disregard for human life displayed in these continued acts of racism. The Maplewood Senior Advisory Committee also recognizes that these hate crimes are disproportionately committed against seniors, which makes these incidents of abuse all the more odious. The targeted attacks against seniors, and in particular elderly women of the Asian American and Pacific Islander descent, is something we felt compelled as a committee to speak out about and to raise awareness of this violence. We ask that people look beyond our differences and see our similarities, that seniors have a family and a community to which they belong and have a richness of experience and wisdom from which we can all benefit and learn. We stand firm in the belief that no one should be subject to fear and abuse because of another person's ageism or racism. We are all working to recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, so in all ways, we should endeavor to protect vulnerable members of our community and prevent any further abuses directed toward the elderly. In our capacity as a representative committee, we condemn these acts of racism and all forms of anti-Asian and Pacific Islander hate. We also recognize that we can always improve our efforts in making ourselves known to all members and facets of the Township of Maplewood. To that end, we commit to redoubling our efforts in making sure that all of Maplewood seniors, regardless of race, origin, class, living situation, or other factors, feel heard and represented in the functions and decisions made in this town.
Thank you, Ms. Larrier. We appreciate your words. Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move on in our agenda. We're on agenda item number 6. And we have our proclamation on Earth Day. Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. So Earth Day is Thursday, April 22nd, as I guess becoming known as environmentalists in our community. I'm honored to read this proclamation. We have, I was going to say it in my report, but we have river cleanup this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Maplewood Memorial Park. We urge everyone to come out and wear like grungy clothes and boots so you can go right in the river and help us clean it out on Saturday from 10 to 2. That's headed by our Environmental Advisory Committee. Also, I'd like to push or maybe bring up for on another day, or maybe have this committee consider a resolution that I'd be happy to try to draft. But because it's Earth Day, I want to bring it up. The responsibility as we struggle locally and on the Township Committee, as Mayor, you know, because we've been working so hard to try to get a consultant to help us with our recycling and garbage and everything that we have to do. And it's costing us, our taxpayers, a small fortune to deal with this. And the reason is plastics. So we have such a ridiculous amount of plastics in our country and in our world, and that has just been made worse by the pandemic for the last year. But mostly the corporations who make and use this plastic, who bottle water, who make millions and billions of dollars profiting off what they sell and bear little to no responsibility for dealing with the end product. We're all left as taxpayers to deal with the end product. And then there's people like me and everyone here who are more responsible, use reusable containers or don't buy water bottles or don't buy sodas, whatever the issue is. But it's like, spitting in the wind because it just keeps getting produced and made. So it's something that I think our federal government, our state government needs to start looking at the corporations that produce the plastics that we are trying to deal with at the end the cycle, and it's just not sustainable. And since we're trying to be sustainable, I think we need to work hard on that. So that's my soapbox for this evening. So I'll be glad to read the Earth Day proclamation. Whereas Earth Day is an annual event that was created to celebrate our Earth's environment and raise awareness about pollution. It was founded by Senator Gaylord Nelson on April 22nd, 1970. And whereas we acknowledge our collective responsibility for environmental equity, education, stewardship, and community sustainability, and we have the insight, drive, and capacity and the capital to work together across social and city borders to build transformative networks to combat climate change. And whereas it is more important than ever to cooperate to find solutions for the plastic waste that is concentrating in several enormous patches in the ocean and that threatens the human food chain. And whereas each year, corporations and activists create new projects, initiatives, and campaigns to protect and restore our Earth, children in the United States celebrate by creating Earth Day themed crafts and school projects. And whereas Earth Day is important because it raises awareness of the impact we have on the environment and what can be done about it. Ways to celebrate Earth Day is to plant some trees, clean up from storms, and help our local community. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Adams, on behalf of Mayor Frank McGehee and the rest of the Township Committee for the Maplewood Township, this day, 20th day of, April 2021, designate April 22nd, 2021 as Earth Day in the Township of Maplewood. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item number 7, which is our employee spotlights. I will yield the floor first to Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is my great pleasure and my honor tonight to honor Captain Joseph Alvarez of the Maplewood Fire Department. I've had the great joy of knowing Joey since before I was elected. And ever since then, wherever I go, it seems that everyone knows Joe. Whenever I wear Maplewood Fire Department hat, it doesn't even need to be anything saying fire department. If I just have something that says Maplewood, whether it's down at League of Municipalities, or one time my daughter and I were at Disney World and I was wearing a Maplewood shirt. It wasn't even fire department. And someone came up and they said, Maplewood, is that New Jersey? And I said, yeah. And they said, Joey Alvarez? So, and I think that just speaks to who Joe is. He's known not just in our community, but also around New Jersey, around the country, as one of the top experts on fire safety, on firefighting. Whenever anyone needs a resource for training, they go to Joe. Radios, they go to Joe. It's such a valuable resource for us here in Maplewood to have him here. It just seems like, wherever, even when he's not on duty for Maplewood, wherever, he's somewhere. The other night we were doing our public safety meeting, and we had some questions on some radio equipment, and we get Joe on FaceTime, and there's something on fire behind him, and he's helping guys put out a fire. And that's just who Joe is. So it's my honor tonight to read the recognition of appreciation resolution for Captain Alvarez, and I'm going to do that now. And then after I do that, I see Chief Weber is here with us tonight. I'm going to give him the chance to say some words of recognition as well before we turn it over to Captain Alvarez. Whereas the Township of Maplewood has been fortunate to have dedicated staff committed to the mission of municipality, and whereas we express our sincere gratitude for the level of professionalism you have shown in protecting the life and property of all citizens, our township is a better and safer place because of your commitment. Once again, thank you for your professionalism and perseverance you have displayed over the years. Whereas we as the Township Committee wish to extend our utmost appreciation for the sacrifice you make to our community and to keep us safe and secure. And whereas the Township Committee wishes to extend our sincere best wishes for every happiness to you in the future and to your continued success in making the township a desirable place to work. Now therefore be it resolved that the Maplewood Township Committee recognizes and appreciates the service of Captain Joseph Alvarez. And this resolution of appreciation and support be duly recorded by the Township Committee on this 20th day of the month of April in the year 2021. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Weber to say some words, and then we'll give the floor to Captain Alvarez.
All right, first, I'd like to thank the mayor and council for recognizing Captain Alvarez. Mr. Lembrick did a great job in speaking on Joe's behalf. And I'd like to congratulate Captain Alvarez, of course, on this recognition. You know, in my 30 years in the fire service, I don't know if I've ever come across a person that has more passion about the profession and is as knowledgeable. As a chief of department, it is incredible to have a resource like Joe Alvarez. And you mentioned it, whether it's speccing out new apparatus, whether it's conducting training, Joe is the man, and he's a go-to guy, not just for Mapewood. You made an interesting point, and it doesn't matter if you're in Arizona, California, Texas. I was out in Appleton, Wisconsin on a trip to do a final inspection on apparatus, and I must have met a dozen people that knew who Joe Alvarez was through his work with the FDIC and Fire Engineering Magazine. So he is a resource that we could never replace. And, you know, beyond just when he's on the job at the firehouse in his own spare time, he's involved in the UASI team and just an incredible guy. And I just want to congratulate Joe again. Thank you guys. You know, beyond just his job in the firehouse, he saved the township of Maplewood a countless amount of money by being able to conduct training in-house. And he'll come in off duty and do training on all 4 platoons, whether it's confined space rescue or any type of training, officer training. And so he really has been an asset to me, to the department, to the municipality. And congratulations, Joe. And thanks for all your help over the years. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you, Chief. And before I turn the floor over to Captain Alvarez, I want to mention one other thing that I neglected to mention before, and that's in addition to his work here in Maplewood, his work around New Jersey, Captain Alvarez is also a member of New Jersey Task Force 1, TF1. And you know, for those of you who don't know, that's basically like, you know, the SEAL Team 6 of firefighters and emergency response. These are the folks that when there's a natural disaster, you know, if there's, you know, hurricane, earthquake, you know, something, and they need, you know, the very best firefighters and first responders somewhere, you know, Joe is one of the guys who, you know, immediately is, you know, in a car or in a truck, you know, on his way. And, you know, he's one of the folks who is, you know, heading into the eye of the storm, is, you know, when everyone else is evacuating, he's heading in. And, you know, the number of you know, great stories and amazing photographs we've seen that Joe has shared with us from some of these areas, and you know, the lives outside of our community that he's touched are really too many to mention, and we're very proud of the work he does. So having said that, you know, Joe, what do you have to say for yourself?
Okay, well, first, Mr. Lembeck, thank you very much for the kind words. Chief Weber, the words were amazing. You got me a little flustered right now. I didn't expect this. I love my job very much, and it means a lot to me that you guys recognized me this month. And I'm never at a loss of words, and Chief Weber could tell you that. I am at a loss of words after what you all just said. I had a lot that I wanted to just say tonight, you know, thanking you, thanking the committee, thanking Mayor McGehee. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. DeLuca was on the committee when I got hired 23 plus years ago for the township. And I'll never forget that. He gave me a shot, and I want to thank him for that, for giving me that chance to be a captain with the Maplewood Fire Department here today. So thank you for all the kind words. It means a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you for being a friend, and thank you for giving us the tools to keep the residents safe of Maplewood and the towns that we go mutual aid to. If it wasn't for you guys giving us the equipment, giving us, the tools that we need to operate on a daily basis, whether it be the radios or the apparatus, again, my hat's off to the Township Committee for always having our back. Thank you, guys.
It's our pleasure.
And girls. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Nance. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I appreciate being one of the guys. I'm
Okay.
used to it.
All right. So thank you, Captain Alvarez. Thank you, Chief Weber. Mr. Mayor, I will turn the floor back over to you, although I think we're sticking on the spotlight. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Limbrick. And Joey, thank you. I mean, you know how we all feel about you, and you always go above and beyond, and you eat and drink fire service, and it's reflected in the culture of our department. So thank you for your service, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, not to be outdone, the police always want to have the fire, and they have, just have a former softball game. I think that has not happened lately, but that being said, we also have a dynamic individual in our police department that we want to recognize tonight as well. So I want to yield the floor to Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this reminds me of the tug of war between the cops and the firefighters in Memorial Park years ago. It's a little sketchy on who won. I think it were the cops won, but you never know. So I have the honor of reading the proclamation for Detective Lieutenant Palmarese. And we also have Chief Duvall on, so we'll let him say a few words after I read the resolution. So Mike, get ready for your comments after the chief. So you're going, so you're going to have to up them here a little bit. So whereas the Township of Maplewood has been fortunate to have dedicated staff committed to the mission of the municipality, and whereas we express our sincere gratitude for the level of professionalism that you have shown in protecting the life and property of all citizens. Our township is a better and safer place, Mike, because of your commitment. Once again, thank you for your professionalism and perseverance you have displayed over the years. And thank you also for being one of the few police officers that still lives in town.
Thanks.
And whereas we as the Township Committee wish to extend our utmost appreciation and your sacrifice to making our community safe and secure, and whereas the Township Committee wishes to extend our sincere best wishes for every happiness in your future and your continued success in making the township a desirable place to work. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Maplewood Township Committee recognizes and appreciates the service of Detective Lieutenant Michael Anthony Palmarese and wish him well in all future endeavors, and further that this resolution of appreciation and support be duly recorded by the Township Committee on this 20th day of the month of April in the year 2021. Congratulations, Michael. Chief, you want to say a few words?
Mr. DeLuca, I want to echo what you said. You can't say enough about his dedication, his professionalism, and his selflessness. I can tell you that Detective Lieutenant Palmarese is one of the people in my department that when I look good, chances are it's because he had something to do with it. As the Detective Bureau Commander, he is behind investigating and basically his diligence in investigating and commitment to the township. Words can't express my appreciation to him. When it comes to the public and the community. He is the face behind a lot of the events that we run for the police department or events that we participate in. Mayfest, any of our events. He is the face behind the event, and I can't thank him enough for that. He goes unrecognized for that, but just know he is the face behind the face, and one of the people who makes it easy to make me look good. So I appreciate him very much. He doesn't ask for thanks, but he gets it anyway. He's very humble that way. He comes to work. He does his job. He treats everybody with respect. He is what leadership looks like in the Maplewood Police Department. So thank you, Mr. DeLuca.
And now, Michael, you want to say a few words?
Oh, thank you. Definitely, Mr. DeLuca, Chief DeVol. That totally means a lot to me. You know, I do everything behind the scenes. I don't like the spotlight a lot. I'll say a few words today. Obviously, I want to take the time to thank everyone for acknowledging me in the employee spotlight this month. My parents taught me the meaning of hard work and dedication, and it is that I bring to this department and town each and every day. I am humbled and truly appreciate the recognition, and I will continue to work with the community and serve my hometown. And once again, thank you again. And it does feel good to be recognized. I appreciate everything again.
Congratulations again, Detective Lieutenant, and thank you, Mr. DeLuca. And Palm, if I may say, as I always say, you have been an amazing advocate for our community. And I remember I met you way before I was even involved, with the Township Committee. We were trying to address food insecurity in our middle school. And we had those meetings in the library with some clergy and with some people from town and other key stakeholders. You were right there at that table. We were trying to figure that out, addressing all that food insecurity. You were right there. And I remember that from, 2014. So appreciate you and everything you do for our community.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you again.
Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item number 8, which is our public comment on agenda items only. Mr. Waltz, do we have anyone who would like to address the TC?
All right, everyone, we'll get going with public comment. If you're on the phone, you can use *6 to unmute, to raise your hand, and then *9 to speak. Do we have anybody that would like to address the Township Committee? I don't have anyone, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Waltz. We'll now move on to agenda item number 9. We have an ordinance on final passage. Ms. Fritzen.
Mayor, item 9, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 3024-21. Bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements in the Township of Mapewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating the aggregate amount of $6,458,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $6,172,000 in bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof.
Sorry about that. This ordinance has been published. Copies posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Would anyone in the public like to speak on this ordinance and this ordinance solely?
I don't have anyone, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, we will close the public hearing, and I will move it. All right, I move the ordinance. This ordinance be adopted as a whole, and the clerk to be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Perfect. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We now have agenda item number 10, another ordinance on final passage.
Yes, Mayor. On final passage, ordinance number 3025-21, refunding bond ordinance in the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, providing for the refunding of all or a portion of certain general improvement bond and certain pool utility bonds of the township, appropriating $4,250,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance by the township refunding bonds in the aggregate principal amount of not exceeding $4,250,000 for financing the cost thereof.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Mr. Waltz, we would like to speak on this ordinance solely.
I don't have any takers, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Hearing none, I'll move it myself. I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
I second the motion.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lundberg,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now on agenda item number 11, introduction new ordinance.
Yes, Mayor, ordinance number 3026-21. It's an ordinance to amend chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Mapewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will add Hillcrest Road to the list of streets where parking within 5 feet of a public or private driveway is prohibited.
Can I get a motion, please?
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on May 4th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lundberg,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now going to skip agenda item number 12, reports from departments, and head right into, we're now going to move on to our agenda item administrative reports. I will first hear from our township administrator, Mr. Jimes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few items of note that I'll reference here in my report. First, as it relates to the farmers market, we're in the process of preparing that for the summer. Based on the discussions we had with the Township Committee recently, we've been looking at breweries to come in and be a part of that. We've kind of decided that would be a good idea to have one per week, so we don't turn it into basically a drinking fest, for lack of a better word, given the size. So as those applications come in, we'll review them, obviously work with the chief of police and make sure all the ABC stuff is in order, and we'll move forward with that. So as they come in, we'll let you know who they are and what we're thinking as far as selections, and obviously if you have any input, we welcome that in that process. The senior center walkway and handicapped upgrades have begun and are in progress. The DPW is handling the walkway at the moment, just using their staff. The engineer is going to be working with some consultants to prepare some specs for a project that we're going to use for money we have funded already in the capital budget. So that process is underway. You should probably see some resolutions in the next meeting or so as it relates to the funding mechanism, or as it relates to the bid mechanism on the second part of that project. But we're doing what we can. We're doing what we can with the staff we have to obviously do it in the most economically efficient way, and we're accomplishing some of that now. Pertaining to our discussion last week regarding the collection of demographic information for the recreation department and programs, that process is underway. The director and myself worked on that process along with our staff, and we came up using a lot of the similar questions that were used in a previous survey that collected demographic information as when you discussed some of the upgrades to Maplecrest Park. Those questions went out in the first round, or the first round of emails since that discussion, I believe today. So that is out and we're doing that. The pool demographic information is going to be collected a little differently because the situation in Rec Desk handles registrations for programs versus memberships a little differently. So as we collect all the new pool memberships, we're going to do one Survey Monkey link to everybody. So we're just kind of waiting until all that data comes in. And we just opened up pool memberships last week. So The programs are in place, the memberships will take a little bit more time. The parking meters are in the process of using Park Mobile to upgrade our parking meter system. The company we were using went insolvent back in the summer. So we're upgrading to Park Mobile. If you've used them in your travels, you'll know that it's a very easy system to use. And I mean, I've used it personally in areas, and I think it's probably the best one compared to all the competitors, and I've used all the competitors as well. So we selected Park Mobile, and I think it's going to be a good fit for everybody. It's going to be a little bit of a cheaper option for us as well. We have a communications meeting next week that's going to discuss communications and technology. I was asked to develop a technology plan and some communications plans, and I'm in the process of doing that. And when we have that subcommittee meeting next week, I'll present an overview of some of the ideas that I have that will make the township more efficient in terms of its operation by utilizing technology in the best way. And also that will increase transparency in many of the solutions that I'm looking at bringing to the township government operations. Some of the other recreation projects we're working on and we're discussing is the Skatepark project. As far as lights, and Danny Ives Foundation, I've been in touch with the foundation, and we're working on bringing a vendor here to come and kind of give us a scope of work and an idea on what it's going to cost. And I have an engineer and consultant coming out that's going to provide some advice as well. And we have a meeting there next Tuesday, and I believe the mayor was invited to that meeting. And if anybody else wants to come, by all means, we can send you the invite. Just let me know if you're interested. I said skate park on that. I meant spray park. I kind of actually combined skate park and spray park on that comment. So I apologize if that sounded confusing. They're right next to each other in my notes. The community fridge is in process as well. I'm working with the director on that project, and we're shooting for May 17th. The shed has been ordered, DPW has been notified, and they're getting ready to pick up that shed and install it. We're working to get the electricity up and running, and we're shooting for a May 17th deadline, or a May 17th goal. And I think that's gonna, should work well and be in process and ready to go. We had some discussions over the weekend and yesterday regarding some of the field issues as it related to the rain and the several closings that occurred over the weekend. Some of the short-term solutions that we talked about as a group was checking the manhole covers, inspecting them for blockages, using different field conditioners, a submersible pump, checking the drainage in general, and inspecting the current sprinkler heads. And then, we can do all those. We can accomplish all those in a short term. It's certainly not a panacea for the problem because there's only so much we could do given the way our fields are. If you have 2 or 3 days of rain, nothing we do is going to have that field, most of those fields ready on the 4th day, even if it's 80 degrees and beautiful outside. So we're going to do what we can with the resources we have. There's obviously going to be some longer term solutions that, will cost some funds. And when those times come, and when that time comes and we're ready to present them to you, we will do such that. Otherwise, my comments, I'll reserve the rest for the budget discussion if necessary, or if any of the consent agenda items have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jimes. Any questions for Mr. Jimes?
I do.
Ms. Adams?
Yes. Going way back to the first item on the farmer's market and the breweries. So a brewery needs to get approval and permission from the state ABC to sell. So I guess my main question is, why are we not just having one brewery as a regular vendor instead of, it sounded like it's just going to be kind of whatever brewery wants to apply kind of thing. I feel like it might be just more, first of all, to try to get a local brewery to be the vendor at the farmer's market for the season and not rotate. So I'm a little confused about, because I thought we were just going to have somebody apply like a regular vendor, get their proper licensing from the state, and then that's it. As opposed to, it sounds like it's an open door thing. I don't understand.
I mean, it was an idea that we had. It's certainly not etched in stone, and we'll take guidance from the committee on that. Our thought was if we had multiple applications, and they already have a liquor license, them getting that state license approval to do this, won't be a problem. So that's why.
No, I know, but they have to do that pretty well in advance, and it's for the season. Or, so I feel like it's a little too kind of crazy to just have multiple brewers, and when it becomes in my opinion, when it it becomes an attraction, right? If somebody knows they can go get their growler filled, or well, not their growler filled, because it's only packaged beer, right? There's no open container allowed to be sold. So they can go knowing what brewery is going to be there as opposed to not knowing what brewery is going to be there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Glenn has his hand up, but it was a thought. I mean, it's not,
Oh, okay.
we're guided by the township committee. But Glenn has some comments.
Glenn?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that we had interest from several local brewers and distillers, one of which was Montclair Brewery, Soma Two Towns Brewing in town. I don't recall the name of the distiller and the winery, but and I believe when I was looking into the ABC guidelines, they can apply to the state ABC for a full season or a single use permit. So I wasn't sure if we were looking at, and again, we're open to any ideas from the TC, whether or not you'd want it to switch week to week, so for different offerings and a diversity of offerings, but we do have some interest, at least 4 or 5 with distributors licenses to date.
Personally, I'd be interested in promoting our local, like hyper local Maplewood brewery business, as opposed to, because we have the same issue in Summit, where my organization runs the Summit Farmers Market, which just opened, and we gave preference just to the brewery that's located in Summit. And we had inquiries from 6 breweries, because once they heard about this, they're calling every farmer's market in the state. So I guess that's a policy issue that this committee should decide.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Jimes, if you want to circle back and, regarding those 2 scenarios, we're happy to look at it. I'm fine with that.
We set up
you had a question. I'm sorry. Perfect.
We set up a subcommittee to work with Mr. Michalowski on this, which was Ms. Adams and myself. If you want us to continue to do that and bring back a recommendation.
That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. But you had another question as well, I believe, or no? No, that was it. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Jimes?
I'm sorry. Yes, on something else. Mr. Jimes, I got some complaints about the bathrooms not being open in the parks when we're having the soccer clubs and other events.
I don't have information on that at the moment, but I'll get that to you first thing tomorrow and find out what's going on.
Ms. Adams has another question.
Yes. For Park Mobile, the fees associated with the convenience fees associated with the use of Park Mobile, those will be paid for by the user, not by us, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And the lighting on the skate park thing, I thought that was still kind of hanging around at engineering and public works. No? Okay. Because that's a huge amount of money. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any more questions for Mr. Jimes? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Jimes, too, for looking into the fields with a lot of complaints over the last week. So thank you for your efforts there. Moving on, we'll hear from Mr. Desiderio, our township attorney.
Mayor, I have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Any questions for Mr. Desiderio? Seeing none, we'll now move on to Ms. Fritzen.
Thanks, Mayor. So I wanted to just mention to the Township Committee that Friday, April 30th is our bid date for the Township liquor license. The plenary retail consumption license that we have been advertising for bid. And that's 10 a.m. And we're going to be live streaming the results. So if anybody's interested in not necessarily coming to town hall of one of the township committee members, you can view that. But you will, of course, get the results from me when I have them right after. We're starting to get some events in the park, and we're monitoring those as far as safety precautions and the governor's numbers at the moment. So they're picking up a little bit, but we, again, are regulating those for safety in mind. We also are getting applications for Maplewood businesses to use the parks again for exercise classes. A lot of interest right now in Rickleton Square Park, which makes sense. It's a great location. The mayor and I had a conversation a little bit about plans for Memorial Day. So I wanted the Township Committee to know that we're, progressing on deciding how Memorial Day ceremony anyway will look this year in comparison to what we were able to do, a very small ceremony last year. So more to follow on that. And that's all that I have. If you have any questions for me, of course.
Is there a parade?
I have not heard anything about a parade, but we were starting kind of like, I guess, with the ceremony first to see if we could pull that off safely at Town Hall this year on the front lawn.
Correct, no parade. Just want us to have one truncated location. Any other questions for Ms. Fritzen? All right, hearing none, we will close agenda item number 12 and move on to reports from elected officials. We will start with Ms. Adams.
So the Broadway River cleanup is this Saturday at 10 to 2. Meet over by the, what do you call it? Ugh, I'm old. What's it called?
Civic House.
The little house. Civic House. Thank you. All I could think of was Skatepark because I was texting with Jerry. So that's from 10 to 2. Bring your mask and bring your volunteers, bring your kids, teach them how to clean up and volunteer for a couple hours. It's great. And we need it because we had to miss last year. So there's twice as much garbage as usual, more than likely. So please show up 10 to 2 this Saturday. Also, next meeting, our Environmental Advisory Committee, hopefully, given the agenda, we'll be doing a presentation on Rachel has been working really hard on trying to narrow down the information. I know those of us on the Township Committee know a lot more than we ever thought we would about leaf blowers, but she has a lot more information, and the EAC is backing, as we've all gotten emails from people, the desire to further regulate gas-powered leaf blowers and gas equipment. So anyway, they're going to do a presentation at our next meeting so that everybody can get all the information that's really important to them. And I just want to make a comment about the relief I felt this afternoon with the verdict in the George Floyd murder case. And it's sad that it took this many years and camera footage from multiple cameras to finally bring justice to our Black and brown folks who've been murdered by police across the country. And so I'm hoping this is a turning point. And just to keep it in mind, I think it's been a really emotional trial for the last few weeks. I know I followed it really closely, and I know I'm not alone in that. It's just been really emotional. So I'm glad it wasn't, a verdict that we didn't want to see. And I hope we can start to turn the tide and start to bring the reforms that are needed to policing in America and start making things better. Maybe this is the turning point. I know it's not ideal. I know all the, there's a ton of imperfection there, but, I'm trying to be optimistic and look at this as a first step, but I couldn't not acknowledge it since it just happened a couple hours ago. So that's my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 3 items. The Arts Council had the town hall last week. It was well attended. I think the artists really appreciated the fact that the council and the township were willing to work with them to help them get back up on their feet. We're going to be doing some more work with the Arts Council and trying to plot out areas in which we can promote the arts more for the next year to really try to get it going again. And with that, Porch Fest is scheduled for Sunday, September 5th. We had our first planning meeting, and we're going to be promoting that. We really think it's going to be special this year because people have been pent up at home, and getting out will be good. Our Engineering, Public Works, and Planning Committee, we had our meeting. The big issue, we discussed the tree ordinance. We're going to be looking at some revisions, and we'll be bringing it back most likely in June to the Township Committee for some changes. And you heard Mr. Jimes say our Communications Committee, we're going to meet on Thursday, April 29th. If you have any items you'd like us to cover, let me know. We've been waiting to hold the meeting until Mr. Jimes got his feet under him here, because we know he has a lot of ideas. And so we're going to be looking forward to his report and talking through the year as to how we can improve our communications and also our technology. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Mr. Daffis.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd also would like to start, as Ms. Adams did, by acknowledging the incredible moment in our nation today with the George Floyd verdict. Justice was served, but this is only the beginning. It's only the beginning. We have a lot of work to do, but we are experiencing a reckoning. This is truly a watershed moment for us as Americans. I do believe the first step in justice is awareness, and the verdict shows that there is at least that right now, awareness. And we have to now move on to the next step, which is to take the necessary actions in terms of police reform and other measures to truly, truly serve justice in our country for Black and Brown people in particular. So, and that's a great segue to my first item in my report tonight, which is the Community Board on Police, which presented to the Hilton Association last Thursday, where we had a very fulsome discussion about community policing relations and neighbor-to-neighbor interactions. How do we establish mutual aid so that we aren't escalating the potential for confrontation and learn to live in harmony with quality of life? The Community Board on Police a week earlier, 2 weeks ago, presented their deeper findings about traffic stops in town. And they will be discussing that presentation a little bit more at our next meeting and coming to the township with recommendations as to steps we can take to enhance pedestrian and vehicular safety in a manner that is consistent with better policing and actually effective in realizing less speeding or accidents on our streets. And we'll have more on that as those details emerge. The Crisis Intervention Subcommittee continues to work with Administrator Jimes in the establishment of a cahoots type model for our town. And I suspect we'll be talking about at least the budget portion of that a little bit later during our discussion item tonight. In human services, we are working with the county to ensure that our houseless population is connected to services. This is the time when a lot of folks, even though they have access to shelter, prefer to be outside, and we have to meet them where we are. But we want to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure that they have access to county services, and our human services coordinator, Beverly Ashman, does a great job at that. Our social worker that we share with South Orange has been responding to requests to assist some of our older adults who are experiencing crisis or need other assistance. Our pool subsidy application is revised and ready to go for the new pool season. As you all recall, we worked on that application last year to ensure that it is truly more accessible and equitable. Administrator Jimes reported already on the latest with the community fridge. Excited about that. Maplewood Village. I'm excited to announce that another Black-owned business is set to join the village, further increasing our economic and entrepreneurial diversity in our little business district. Successful franchise BK Lobster has clawed its way into town. That's lobster from Maine with a Brooklyn twist. Fun and delicious rolls, bringing more seafood to the village in a casual setting, cool vibe, yet in every way at the height of the Epicurean experience. I don't know if you all have had BK Lobster in the city, in Manhattan or Brooklyn, where it started. It truly is delicious and great, and this will be a welcome addition to the existing diversity and dining scene that we have in our village. Hands on Spine Wellness will be opening soon at the former Geraldine Studio spot. Our pedestrian plaza has returned, as you might have learned. Right now, we're only doing Thursday through Saturday, along with music nights on Friday and Saturday nights. We will resume the Monday through Saturday plaza next month and into the summer. The first weekend of May, we'll also bring our first outdoor market in support of our retailers, which should be a lot of fun. I regret to inform that our village manager, Deb Yohannan, will be leaving us sometime in the coming months to pursue other opportunities. We want to thank her for her incredible energy and round-the-clock commitment to the village all these years. As you know, she first started as Julie Doran's assistant and then managed the village on her own. The MVA board is responsible for recruitment and filling that post and is already in the process of convening a search committee, the details of which I will share as they become available. The job will be posted publicly and interviews will be conducted by the selection committee. While it's incumbent on us to fill the position as soon as possible so that our merchants aren't rudderless during this time, this is yet another opportunity, I believe, for us as a community and as a governing body to resume talks about the future of the alliance, of the SID itself, considering making the position full-time, reconsider Main Street designation, and some of the things that we've talked about through the years about Maplewood Village Alliance. All long-term discussions to be had with the Alliance Board, no less. Deb will be staying until her replacement is found and hired, and we have her, I think, at least until August 1st. And we're hearing that movement continues in terms of the new and improved Maplewood Theater and in terms of recruitment of grocers for the former Kings to the former Kings spot. Age-friendly two towns for all ages. I regret to inform that our great age wellness advocate, Kathy Rowe, has also given notice. Kathy is joining the New Jersey Advocates for Aging Well as their new executive director. We're really excited for her. Administrator Jimes is working with South Orange Administrator Adam Lohner on posting the job and is scheduling a meeting with the management team to interview applicants. We wish Kathy well and thank her for her vision and leadership in age wellness. She will get to use more of her policy muscles as an advisor to the state in her new role, and hopefully New Jersey will adopt statewide what we have done here in Little Soma or Mapso. And since she still lives here, maybe on occasion we can still bounce some new ideas off of her. In health, as of yesterday, as you all know, the COVID vaccination eligibility has expanded to anyone age 16 and above. We've updated our information on our website accordingly. And we also want to highlight that we are starting our homebound vaccinations tomorrow. We have about 17 households that we will be vaccinating through Salerno. With the Moderna vaccine. So 28 days later, we'll have to go back to those 17 households. And we are partnering with the county in special accommodations for our seniors, especially our seniors 65 and older who do not have access to transportation. And according to this partnership, if there is someone out there who needs a ride, to the Stephen Adubato Sports Complex in Newark, where they are reserving slots for seniors only. We encourage them to call our health department to reach out to Talia Jeffers at 973-309-4178 to schedule an appointment. 973-309-4178. And that information is available on our website, as I said. Excuse me, technical difficulties here. There's a resolution on the agenda, consent agenda tonight, to extend our VPOC grant. That is the vulnerable populations outreach related to COVID vaccinations and testing, which is a great thing. It's been very successful. We've had Talia Jeffers because of it, and we've been able to do significant community outreach. There will be another resolution next time when we meet about using some of those monies to get us another informational sign so that we can have two, like the electronic sign that we use for flu shots. We can use an extra one to do other informational advisories and emergency advisories for OEM. And that will be, unless there are any objections from anyone, that will be on our consent agenda for next time. And we're putting together a community outreach plan now that vaccination eligibility has expanded to include almost everyone. The community outreach plan will engage volunteers in canvassing in the parks, some door to door, at high traffic areas, Walgreens, CVS, and the like. We want to get the word out, and we especially want to drive up our vaccination percentages in our Afro-Caribbean, African-American, and Latino communities. And we'll be recruiting all of you too. We'll do talk to the township style outreach, and I will be sending out those details. We'll be meeting with our OEM coordinator, Mr. DeLuca, later in the week. And after that discussion, we'll have a plan together and we'll mail it out. Drug take back is this Saturday, April 24th. Please return your unwanted pills or other medication, expired and whatnot, to the police department, no questions asked. Obviously, you can do that every single day, anytime of the year in Maplewood, but Saturday, April 24th is the designated drug take back. Public Works, food composting, my last item in my report. It's fast becoming apparent that not only is the recycling secondary market drying up, but that the vast majority of our waste, that being food waste, residential and commercial, is also piling up, causing environmental injustices and health hazards. It's prompting new federal and state regulations related to food waste. So we've engaged with local experts and township officials in neighboring Millburn, where they are piloting an engagement with local food compost vendor Java. We've discussed this pilot that Millburn is engaged in, what it looks like, what it costs, how did they engage with Java, which appears to be the only local such vendor doing this type of level of food composting without going through the public bid process. Administrator Jimes has been part of those discussions. We talked about this last at Engineering and Public Works last week. The committee, the Engineering Public Works Committee, recommends our doing the same with Java for a 6-month pilot period, engaging anywhere between 50 to 60 resident subscribers. If we have your green light tonight, everyone's green light on the TC, we will move forward. And again, due to this being a pilot and of unique nature, we can sort of get around the public bidding process. And also, if we do it in the way that Millburn is doing it, which means that the residents will be contracting with the township for their food composting, we would have a direct relationship with Java. We would not be merely hosting the composting. Then we can also get around the requirements that trigger concession rules. And I invite Administrator Jimes to add more to that because he's been part of those discussions, and certainly if anyone else has any questions. So I've been charged to move this forward by the Engineering Public Works Committee if we do have a consensus here this evening by the Township Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Any further discussion?
Just add that the procurement requirements are, we have the ability to do that for the pilot program because the anticipated total cost of the concession will be well below any bid or quote thresholds. And then if the pilot program is workable, as we move forward, we would likely have to do a concession bid. But as the committeeman said, there really only is one person that will likely bid on it anyway, but to do our due process, we would submit that bid out.
Okay, Mr. Desiderio.
Okay, I think we need to have some more discussion about this. Okay, and the whole procurement process. So I'll be happy to do that with you, Mr. Jimes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Desiderio. So, Mr. Daffis, I'll yield the floor back to you.
Let me just ask one question. Is there a suggestion that because it's a pilot program, that it's somehow exempt from the procurement statute?
Only as it relates to the total value of the contract.
Okay, it has nothing to do with being a pilot.
No, it's tangentially related because the cost is going to be less than the bid threshold.
The pilot just makes it small enough that we fall below the threshold. If we were to do this township wide or even on a larger basis, there's, we'd go over the line, right?
Right.
Okay.
But we also have some internal regulations with regard to securing bids or proposals. So we have to comply with those, the Maplewood internal process.
I'm not specifically aware of those other than, the standard bid and quote thresholds. I think neither one of these would.
We can talk about it off the record. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Thank you, Mr. Jimes. So we'll let the two of you connect, and then we'll regroup and finish this conversation after they've had that conversation themselves. Mr. Daffis.
That's it, Mayor. That was my report. Thank you. And I will definitely follow up with Mr. Jimes and Mr. Desiderio about the food composting.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Daffis. I'll now yield the floor to Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like my colleagues, I would say I was relieved today. It was the verdict I was hoping for, but as many of you know, it's actually not the one I was expecting. So I was surprised, but in a good way and relieved. I'm used to common sense and common folks knowing what they saw with their own eyes or knowing what the evidence said, but then the profession that I'm a part of, once we get involved, screwing it up and justice therefore not being done. And I was glad to see today that justice was served at least as well as it could be today. And obviously there's a long way to go for justice to be served going forward. And there is no justice that can make up for the injustices of the past. But our path obviously is one that's forward, and the work that we're doing here in Maplewood, as some of my colleagues have referred to, specifically Deputy Mayor Daffis referred to the work we're doing with the Community Board on Police, the work we're doing directly with our police here in Maplewood, I think is an important part of what's going to be a long and difficult process. But I think we're doing that work here in our community, and I'm proud of that. Moving on to sort of the more usual public safety report. We had our meeting last week. The fire department is continuing to respond to some COVID-related calls, but fortunately, they have not seen too big of an uptick in terms of of COVID-related emergency calls. Certainly as compared to this time last year when they were seeing, last time, March, April, May is when they were really seeing a very high volume. So seeing a lot fewer this year, fortunately, as we would hope and expect. Overtime has been up a bit this year versus last year, but that's not unexpected. Last year we had a few months where we had, overtime was the lowest it's been in years because through COVID, our firefighters, our EMTs, basically, they didn't take sick time. They didn't take vacation. They came into work every day. They did their shifts. And as part of the negotiations we did last year, we allowed them to carry, so that we didn't have a rush on overtime. At the end of the year, we allowed them to carry over some of their overtime, some of their vacation time to the first half of this year. So, we're going to see, sort of continue to see some of the vacation time that would have been used last year continue to be used through the first half of this year. They're continuing to do a lot of training in the fire department, including live burn training, also playing catch up some of the training that they weren't able to do last year because of COVID. Also just because they were so busy last year, in part because of COVID. So they've been very busy through the first few months of this year on training. Moving over to police. Overall crime stats this year to date are way down overall 48% versus this time last year. Overtime continues to be down in most categories. Patrol overtime, which is usually the biggest driver of overtime, is down 32% compared to this time last year. We won't necessarily, see that same savings in terms of dollars because we're under a new contract now. But on the UCR, theft, which is one of the items which we actually saw, rising over the last few years, is down significantly this year. It's actually down nearly 65% year to date. So a massive decrease in theft so far this year. Auto thefts are also down so far this year. 4 reported auto thefts last month. All 4 of those vehicles were either running or had their keys inside. So again, another reminder: don't do that. Don't leave your car unattended and running. Don't leave your keys inside. We discussed, and Mr. DeLuca will be leading the discussion in a few minutes, the rates for off-duty police officers, and I think that's ready now for action by the Township Committee, that takes care of public safety. The Recreation Advisory Committee will be meeting tomorrow night. The Pool Advisory Committee will be meeting next week. Pool registration is open. That's right, Mr. Jimes. People can sign up for the pool. Okay, so, go ahead, get your registration in, sign up for the pool. We're looking forward to a great summer. Got a new filter. And Mr. Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you. I'll be brief. A couple of things. COVID numbers continue to be a factor. We see between 7 to 11, or 4 a day. It's usually around those numbers. We have 1,469 positive cases through yesterday evening. In terms of the state of New Jersey, we're considered still in a high activity level. So it's kind of the tale of 2 situations where our numbers are showing as of the 18th of April that over 60,000 people in Essex County, almost 161,000 people rather, have gotten vaccinated. We're still seeing numbers consistently. So we're not at the inflection point yet where we can feel comfortable was saying that we're out of the woods yet. So continue to do the things that you're doing. And it's actually impacting not just people in their older age or in their middle 30s and 40s. It's a lot of our youth as well that continue to be an issue. I'll quickly share my screen, and part of the county, they continue to do the job of providing opportunities for us. So as you see, there's another shared food event coming up this Thursday on Earth Day. So please share this word. We'll get this out. There are still people in our community that are hungry and are deserving. So we need to be cognizant of that as well. A couple other things. Myself and Mr. DeLuca continue our conversations with key stakeholders at Irvington Avenue. We're looking to solidify next month a conversation with some key stakeholders, clergy, as well as business professionals, to give them a voice. We're going to share with them the improvements streetscape project, phase 2, which is going to be underway shortly after going through the federal process, and also recap on street phase 1 as well. Also, as many of our residents know, as of yesterday, the phased-in process of getting our children back in schools has begun. We will continue to work with the school district as well as SOMEA to stay on target with the end goal of following through on all the phases, and then, of course, making sure that everyone is back in school for in-class instruction in the fall. And then finally, before we move on to our important discussion item on the budget, as several of my colleagues have already communicated about today's event in terms of the verdict, the Township of Maplewood will be having an event tomorrow at 5:30 at Town Hall, the steps of Town Hall, led by our clergy, so people in the community can come and reflect on the results of the George Floyd trial, and also just have a place to continue to gather in community and reflection. So that'll be tomorrow evening at 5:30 at the steps of Town Hall, and all are welcome. So that concludes my report for this evening, and we should now move on to our discussion items, and the first one being the municipal budget. So in terms of the budget, a memo was provided to everyone here, all my colleagues, on the 14th of April regarding the due diligence that's been performed over the course of the first quarter in relation to the budget. What I can say is that the committee itself has gone through operating expenses, it's gone through salary and wages, and it's gone through everything with a fine-tooth comb. As you've read from the budget, now the numbers are looking as if with the increase for 2021, that the average increase over the prior year would be $318 and change for the average household. This is looking and taking into account that we're looking at a 0.886 tax rate increase, as the budget currently is, as we communicated to you in the 14-page memo which was provided. That being said, if you take a look at page 5, I believe, the memo, which was options of potential surgical cuts that we can continue to do, that's an opportunity there where we can cut the budget more and reduce that increase, which theoretically, for example, in my opinion, if we were to look to eliminate the fireworks, which with the overtime and the cost is $85,000. And if we look to do a phase approach with our Kahoot / social service program, that's another $125,000. And right there, those alone are 0.005 in terms of a tax rate. And that would reduce us from 886 to 881, which would reduce increases for the prior year down to $296. Did someone say something? I apologize. Okay. So, some of the things that we want to discuss is just understanding that there are pressures on our budget that we cannot change. Our new PBA and SOA contract, pension costs continue to increase. These are costs that, those two alone are 80% of our costs that are putting pressure on the budget. And then the fact that, we basically lost over $2 million in revenue because of COVID. These are real numbers that you can't replace. There's not a $2 million tree outside Town Hall. So because of that, we've been very thoughtful about ways to find ways to continue on the path we have from 2019, where we went and had with the increase that prior year was $251 in terms of the average household assessed home value. And because of COVID, we were very thoughtful, and we decided, not knowing where we were going to go with COVID, we decided to reduce the tax rate by 0.01 cent, which resulted in it being 0.823 versus 0.233. So there's the things that we've done. What I want to do now is I want to open up the floor to have a conversation about the memo which you've read. I have notes all over the place, but I want to open the floor for any questions you have, and understand that really what we want to do tonight is, we know what our ceiling is, that 318.87, that 0.886. Myself, I want to get that down, and I think we all do. And those are two suggestions I've made. So I'd like to hear any other thoughts in terms of where we are right now. Mr. Kaloje is with us tonight, and he can provide even more information, or I guess additional information, although the memo was pretty, detailed in regards to our next steps, so we can move forward and get a budget introduced in May. I yield the floor.
Mr. Jimes, did you want to add anything to this?
No, I think the mayor spelled it out fairly simply. As far as his suggestions, I mean, it's obviously a policy decision as it relates to the Cahoots program. But I think even if we were to get started, we're in April already, almost May. So, it's not like we would have somebody on board within the next couple of weeks. So we're at half the year anyway. So if there was a willingness to fund that the following year, obviously those months since the phase in, we could just add that back the following year. So I don't think that if the township committee, decides to phase that in by reducing it in half, I don't think it compromises the integrity of the program and achieving the goals that the Community Board on Police wants to achieve. I still think those goals are achievable as a phase-in process. And as we get into the next calendar year, we'll obviously look at it and, increase that program.
Right. So what we're saying is we'd start with one social worker and work our way up from there.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. Mr. Kaloje, do you have anything you want to add?
I got like 2 computers and a tablet and 3 mice on the table. So my apologies for taking so long to find the right one. The only thing that I would like to add to this discussion is on some of the suggested cuts that we're looking at, we need to recognize that whatever we do today is going to have an effect on our 2022 budget. So fireworks is probably a bad example because we cut it from the budget last year. So if we cut it from the budget this year, it's going to be no harm, no foul. But next year we are going to see a spike in our tax levy because we're going to put it back into place. The same would hold true for the Cahoots social workers. If we don't fully fund it now, recognizing that if we're going to go to 2, that we're cooking in an increase in 2022 before we even get there because of decisions that we're going to make tonight. So I think that just really needs to be clear that from a budgetary multiple year budgetary perspective, my recommendation is you put in what you need to put in, as opposed to partially putting it in and then having to automatically pick it up in the following year.
So, Mr. Kaloje, how would you recommend that we control this increase? What cuts? Because I feel like every time we talk about this and talk about cutting things, we're advised that we shouldn't do it because of the impact on next year's budget, that it'll be a spike. And I understand the concept of multi-year budgeting, but I get frustrated with, if we can't cut something that we're not doing, what can we cut? You know what I mean? Like this year is what, so I guess what I'm asking is, what would you advise? Where can we go? What can we do to bring this under control, as opposed to us just, spinning our wheels and hoping we can cut something that will then be advised that will just cause us problems in the years coming.
Well, and my apologies, committee woman, because apparently I'm not explaining it well, and it's a little bit of a complicated issue, so it's hard to do that. And I look at the example when last year we cut an additional $350,000 out of the budget, and we opted to apply that to the tax levy because we thought it was important to give everyone some tax relief in all the economic upheaval that we were experiencing. But the point is that that penny that came out of the tax rate last year ultimately was a head start to that penny coming into the tax rate this year. And if we start to make comparisons as to where the levy went, and it looks like it's this enormous spike, right? We only went up, I'd say 3 cents last year and 6 cents this year. But if we average those two numbers together, we wind up seeing that we came at a 4.5 cent increase. And had we left that penny in, it would have been a little bit of a smoother increase as opposed to we started here and we're moving to here. And so from a philosophical perspective, it's not an issue to do what you guys are considering doing, which is eliminate the fireworks. It's just a recognition of when we decide fireworks is coming back in, there's going to be that spike. There's no way around it. If you want to avoid the spike, you need to budget for it in this year. But we're already experiencing a spike, right? So I get how this is a little bit of a frustrating and a difficult decision to make. Ultimately, from a CFO perspective, nice smooth line is what we would prefer to see. So anything that we're going to change here is going to kind of alter that trajectory to make it a little bit of a higher line in next year's budget. As long as everyone's comfortable or recognizes that, or maybe we're never going to do fireworks ever again, and then that becomes an easy cut. But in all honesty, if we're going to move forward with 2 social workers, and I understand that we're only in for half a year, but it's a trap that a lot of towns get into, where we're going to hold off hiring people until July 1st. And so if it's a $40,000 salary, we're really only going to budget $20,000. But we know that it's a $40,000 position. So we know that next year we're automatically going to go up by $20,000, or we're going to get rid of the person that we just hired 6 months ago. So these are not easy decisions to make. And again, from a fiscal conservative perspective, a flatter line for increases is better than a flat followed by this.
Right, and that's
I know that I'm still not explaining it well.
Yeah, and I think you did explain it well. But as we discussed, and this is a recommendation that we did as a committee, is that we do know that spending $50,000 on overtime with police for fireworks in COVID is just not smart, right? And plus the $35,000 that would cost us the fireworks alone, especially no other town around us is, we're not ready. And it's for one night, $85K in one night, and coming out of a COVID budget, I can't move forward with that. The recommendation is that we definitely cut that. And then with the Kahoot situation, we do understand that there could potentially be a spike, but as we discussed, we're looking to be consistent, and part of being consistent by pulling this out would not mitigate us from that. We've looked at our bonding and made right decisions by, as we've already approved tonight, to put us in a position where we can also increase, our reserves, which I think is very near and dear to your heart as well. So, these are cuts that, as we talked about last week, make sense to put us in a position where we can have a palatable budget for 2021. And then also one thing we also will factor in too, which will be helpful too, is that, when we look at salary, wages, and merit, there's some, we obviously didn't hit that number that was proposed. So there's some savings there. And if we're able to leverage those savings in, then we'll see, a respectable reduction and put us within a respectable ballpark, because people are still climbing out of COVID as well. Let's not fool ourselves. We have a lot of people who have been very fortunate in our community, or back at work and leveraging Zoom. We have a lot of people also who are in various industries that are still trying to get back into the fold. They're not like Broadway's not awake yet. And we know that also that, the film industry is slowly coming back as a couple examples of a couple of industries that a lot of our residents are part of, So, again, I think our recommendations are, we think the floor is what it is in terms of the 0.886, doing a deep dive. We know the opportunity is there to make some savings. and we'll have to reevaluate in 2022 as we did in 2020. But that's the recommendation, unless anyone else wants to keep those things in the budget and make it higher.
Mayor?
Mr. Lundberg.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't to express a contrary opinion, but, I think we're absolutely right on the fireworks. I don't think that's something that we're necessarily saying we're going to eliminate going forward, but I think this year it's just not going to happen. We're not going to have, that kind of event in July in July of this year. And there's no reason to incur the costs of doing an event we're not going to have. In terms of cahoots, I agree, it's going to take some time to get that off the ground. There's going to be a ramp up period. And I also think, while it's not something we can count on, we shouldn't count out the possibility that we may be able to get some grant funding or other funding for that. I mean, South Orange has been very successful so far. They're a little bit ahead of us in terms of their starting, but the Community Care and Justice Initiative they have, they've been able to get, had some success, both the private sector and the public sector in terms of funding. So that's something that, we'll certainly look to, and, certainly not making any promises, Mr. Kaloje, but, that may be something that moving forward as we ramp up may help us to keep the cost increases down.
Thank you, Mr. Lundberg.
Some of this is incumbent on us meaning the staff in my office, to manage the budget accordingly. I can just think of some of the things I referenced, some of the technological efficiencies earlier in the meeting, and I can see some possibility for savings, in our operating budget that we might not be anticipating. Now, I don't want to tell you now we'll cut $50,000 because I'm anticipating savings, but I just know as I manage the day-to-day operations that these things are in my head, and I'm trying to reserve as much money in a budget every year as humanly possible, so, and for this specific reason.
No, and appreciate that, Mr. Giles. I mean, in our memo document, we looked at, the fact that, we understand that, taxes are a big part of, are a big issue in our community. We're being thoughtful. I mean, we do recognize that, we're right now at about 25.4% of the budget of someone's budget when it comes to taxes, and we're trying to manage that piece of it. But again, I mean, after going through the operating expenses over and over again, obviously to Mr. Giants' point, there might be some more opportunities as we start to move forward. Looking at our debt to equity ratio and being smart about that, taking advantage of interest rates and doing some refinancing. Recognizing that, we have it in place so when the chimney comes back, we're ready to go. With the addition of these two, which we recommend as a finance committee, which could bring us down to 8.881, and then probably a little bit lower once Mr. Kaloje factors in the variance between what we recommended for merit and what was provided, was initially baked into the budget. Then we could see that 0.881 maybe go down another couple pennies, and maybe it's 8.79 or 8.80, which would lower that annual rate to about 270 something on the average household. Just some of the math I have here. So any other thoughts, concerns, Mr. DeLuca? I see you saying, okay, no, you're good. All right.
Mayor, I wanted to say a couple things.
Okay, please, Mr. Daffis.
Yeah, so look, the budget is never a fun thing, right? It's never going to be the number that anybody is going to be happy with, because no taxes is what people want, right? But they also want services, and they should have services in our town. And I think that all things considered, in light of the great losses that we experienced, this is a budget that we all as governing body members can be comfortable with, because this is a budget that continues to invest in our community, continues to provide the services that people expect to receive. It also invests in infrastructure in ways that were not previously possible, right? We want our sewer to work. We want our roads to be paved. We want to invest in our municipal equipment so that when we have storms, our equipment works, our public works work. We want to invest in our municipal buildings so that our employees have a safe place to work where they can provide the essential services that our residents expect. These are all investments in our employees and in our community. And yes, we also want to be true to our values and our morals by investing in those social justice initiatives that we have talked about, that we have championed, that other towns are looking to us to emulate. And I think this budget does that. It does a little bit of everything. It doesn't do all of one thing and not enough of the other. It does a little bit of everything in light of the situation that we're all living in due to the pandemic. Sure, we can come out here and we can create a narrative and we can create a graph and we can go out there for political theater and say, oh, guess what? Good news. Tax cap, 2%. That's what we're doing this year. But the devil's always in the details. Are you still going to pave my roads? Is your equipment still going to work? Can I still go to town hall and get what I expect to get? Are you still going to have partial jitney service, recreational facilities, the pool? All of this stuff costs money. When I flush my toilet, is it going to go down instead of coming back up? Our sewer, right? We've never invested enough in these things, and we're doing so this year. And I think it's actually, if I may be so bold, I think it's courageous. I think it's leadership. That is what we should be doing with taxpayers' money. And when we talk about it this way, instead of 0.886 or down to 6.9 or close to 7, that's meaningless. What it means is what we're doing with the money. And what we're doing with the money is we are investing back into our community, and we are giving the residents who live here and yes, pay high taxes, property taxes, the services that they should expect. So I'm comfortable with this budget, as difficult as it is. The numbers are not pretty, but it is what it is. And like you said, Mayor, in the beginning, we're not going to find a $2 million tree. So we have to do the best that we can do, but we also have to be true to our values. Our budget represents our values. It is not just 2 and 2 equals 4. Where does that $4 go? And I think that $4 is going back into the community. And we should be proud of this budget and not dance around or talk around it.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Mr. DeLuca, I see you unmuted yourself.
Yes. I really wasn't going to say anything, but I do think that we should provide the services, and we need obviously the tax money to provide those services. But look, we will have now, if we adopt this, we will have increased the taxes over the last 3 years on the average house about $700. That's real money. And we talk about the affordability of our community, and we're pricing people out. We're pricing people who can't come to our community, and we're pricing people who are here that they have to leave. I'm going to support this because I know we have to keep this machine of government working. And I think if we're going to have high taxes, we got to have high quality services. So I agree with that. But at some point, those numbers really mean something to people. And it's not the people who are working in theater or who may be working in a law firm in New York or Wall Street. It's people who have to jump on a bus here or ride around with 2 cars because they have to figure out two rides because they can't figure out how to move around here. So we have those folks who are of more modest means in our community. We can't forget that. So yes, we have to move this. I really welcome Mr. Jimes coming in here with a fresh pair of eyes, because I think that we need a different look at this budget. We get hammered every year and we come up with the same kind of rationale. Oh, it's the pension, or it's the PBA, or the this or that, or we didn't get as much money as we thought. But, you know, our assessments are going up, our values are going up, our valuation has gone up $25 million in the last 3 years. So we've got to look at this stuff and see if there's something broken here. We can't continue on the same path. And of course, the macro issue is we need the state to really address property taxes, because we're caught here at the end. The state's got to really resolve this. But, we kind of blame the school, but we have to blame ourselves. The cost of municipal government is just skyrocketing here in this region. So I really would like to see what Mr. Jimes is going to, take a look at this, see if we can do things differently, see if there's ways we could think about budgeting differently, working with Mr. Kaloje, because we can't continue on this path.
Yeah, Mr.
One other thing while I have the floor, I know we spent in the first quarter of 2021, we spent money on COVID-related issues. We don't have any more CARES money. We do have FEMA opportunities that we don't want to leave on the table. So Mr. Jimes and Mr. Kaloje, I'm going to call together you two, the two chiefs, maybe the DPW engineer, and we're going to take a look at what we spent since January. We'll get in touch with our FEMA person, see what is eligible to submit for reimbursement, just so we could get some more money that we're entitled to back to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. And I do agree that, we have to continue to, this is really, I would say, really probably technically year two or three of us rethinking under Mr. Kaloje and under Mr. Jimes, how we look at our finances from an operating perspective, and then also from sources of revenue, and looking for new ways to find new sources of revenue, and for ratables, and being more responsible, in terms of development and what we can do there as well. And when we talk about the average rate, we know that's an average. We know for some people it's more, for some people it's less. But no, we have to continue that conversation. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And as we have other, one-time revenue streams coming in, for example, it's public knowledge that we have a liquor license that hopefully will be purchased in the next week or so. How we're smart about allocating that money, not to just dump it in and give us a quick short-term relief, but more thoughtful in terms of how we allocate that. So we're looking at all sources of funds. And so that is, that's part of that process as well. And then finally, as you know as well, Mr. Lucas, is really, as we get close to hopefully the opportunity of a real shared service, that is going to save, that's 7 figures. That's a 7-figure saving, maybe not in the first year, but shortly behind it. So we're continuing to be thoughtful and surgical in terms of ways to line out, if you will, where we are from a tax perspective. So Mr. Kaloje, if you could take the notes of those 2 recommendations and look to reduce them and send out a revised memo for the TC to see, then we can have another conversation with the hopes of getting our budget ready to go in May of next month.
I'd also like to add the cahoots model is something that I totally support, but it's a creation, it's a $250,000 creation, right? That we're adding to our budget without subtracting anywhere else. And if this is something I'd like the community board and the liaisons for that to really look at, because I don't want a year from now, being asked to hire more police or, you know what I mean? I'd like to try to do some attrition and to compensate for that new stuff. And I don't, at least I haven't been involved in that conversation. And I think that's something that needs to be paid attention to, so we just don't keep going on the same track with police while we're augmenting a lot of the whole goal is to have non-police employees with social service training to respond to a lot of the calls. So while there would also have to be a police component to that, I don't want to keep growing the police force as well while we're adding a whole another sort of department. So I just want that to be in the back of everyone's mind, and maybe the community board and Mr. Lembrick and Mr. Daffis can kind of relay that back through those.
Ms. Adams, I can't promise that request won't come next year or in future years, but I can promise it won't come from me.
That's really helpful.
Thank you, Ms. Adams, and thank you, Mr. Limbrick. Okay, any more discussion? If not, we need to move forward to the next discussion item.
Before we do, Mayor, I just want to make sure that I understand my homework assignment correctly. So I'm going to adjust the budget. We've already made adjustments for the decisions that were from the Thursday meeting. I am removing the $85,000 for the fireworks from this budget. And I believe that was the consensus. And I'm not clear as to what the consensus was with the cahoots. Are we reducing it to only half of what we have in the budget, or are we leaving it full?
Half. 125 reduction. That's a 0.003. Give you a total net of 0.005. Plus, when you go into salary and wages, reduce the merit numbers by the 255, which we didn't allocate.
Okay.
Perfect.
And so I'll put together a memo.
Happy to have you, because I know you never answered my main question. Don't think I missed that. So I'd like for you and Mr. Giles to work on that, because, you know, there's two of us that serve on the finance committee and three of us who don't. So we don't get into the nuts and bolts, but I'd really like the administration and CFO to offer more solutions rather than just explanations as to why we can't do A, B, C, and D. So that's my frustration during this process, is that I'm not feeling like I'm getting any help from the professionals who I would hope could be digging into this and finding it. So just had to add that. So anything you come back with would be gravy. So.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Okay, we're going to move on now to discussion item number 2, Mr. DeLuca, police off-duty employment ordinance. Oh, you're on mute. Mr. DeLuca, you're on mute.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course.
Just testing you. So I just put up, you know, we got the code. So if everyone's okay with this, I sent this out. We could give it to Mr. Desiderio to Maplewood, design it in our Maplewood fashion, and put it on for introduction at our next meeting. Once we get the ordinance passed, then we'll deal with the resolution on the rates.
Right. So Mr. Luca, the ordinance wouldn't actually have the rates. We would set the rates each year by resolution, as we've done before, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I certainly support all the you know, the draft that Mr. Luca has. And, you know, as I've done the Public Safety Committee meeting, want to publicly thank Mr. Luca for the work that he did. It was a lot of research, a lot of gathering, you know, what other towns did and sort of looking at best practices and taking sort of the best to bring our code on this, you know, up to standard. And I'm appreciative and I support this. And I would second moving forward with this for first reading at the next meeting and having Mr. Desiderio Maplewoodize it in the meantime.
Yeah, we were missing, compared to the other towns, we practically didn't even have an ordinance. So thank you, Mr. DeLuca, for that work.
I agree. We, as we cover public safety, this is well thought out, and it puts us in the right position in terms of the process and making sure our employees understand they work for us first and foremost. So after that, if there's no more further discussion, we'll look for that to be moved forward. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. All right, we're now on agenda item number 15, which are consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move adoption of items 1 through 13 of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now on agenda item number 16, public comment, limited 3 minutes on any subject matter. I think Mr. Humer is asking to be recognized. Mr. Humer, you have the floor. Unmute yourself, sir. Or maybe not.
Oh, no, this happened last time too.
Yeah. What's up with it?
Okay. Yeah, I know exactly, Mr. Closer. You were at fault last time.
So,
Mr. Humer, if you want to type in your comments, we can do it that way.
I mean, I know what Mr. Humer was going to ask generally. So if you know, maybe I could phrase the question. If he's able to come on, he can ask it more specifically. But Mr. Humer wanted to know about the status of the master plan reexamination, and also what the opportunity is going to be for citizen input in that process.
Perfect. That's a great question. Thank you for that, Mr. Lembrick, and Mr. Humer, his fault. So Ms. Prashota, who is our chairwoman of the planning board, is putting together a steering committee. The first phase of the process is to create the RFP so we can go out and find the right consultants that will help us. Myself personally, I've reached out to several mayors in the area, President Collum, Mayor Dellisfort in Union, Mayor Voss in Irvington as well. But really, it's the next step is because it's under the planning board's jurisdiction is to have a kickoff meeting and start that process. I can assure you that once we get underway, that mirroring what South Orange did, we're going to have a lot of community input, a lot of virtual and also in-person sessions. And this process will take the latter part of not just this year, but also 2022 as well. So thank you. Any other questions for us, Mr. Waltz?
Sorry about that, guys. My mouse died. That's why I was out of commission. All right, I got one more for you. Next up, Glenn's going to transfer him over. Aaliyah Covell. You got 3 minutes. You're on mute.
Mute.
Yes, got it. Hi, I am, you all know that I'm the editor for Tap Into Soma, but I'm also a former Maplewood resident. I lived there for 23 years, and now I've been in South Orange for 3 years. And something small but important has occurred to me over the last, I guess, year or so. The name that you hold yourselves to is committee man and committee woman. And in this day and age, I'm wondering if you might consider creating a gender neutral term, just committee person, committee member. I don't know if you noticed, but when I say it in the newspaper, I always say committee member, even though I think legally you're a committee man or committee woman. So that's my input for the evening. Thank you.
Oh, sounds, thank you. And I don't think that's gonna be an issue with us, but I don't think we need to discuss this. It's a yes, you're good.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond just ourselves. As you may have noticed, I try to do that even when we're talking about Mr. Jimes, even Mr. and Mrs. Our gender terms, right? I've tried to do it with Clerk Fritzen, although Clerk Fritzen prefers that I use Madam Clerk. So, I mean, they're old habits, they're hard to break, but I do agree with Aaliyah Covell that we should definitely, in this day and age, we should definitely go gender neutral to the extent that we can, and we just have to practice. Practice makes perfect. So it's a good suggestion.
Agreed. I mean, there's many things we can use example, like when people say things been grandfathered, that's a historical racist term, or blacklisted. You got blacklisted. I mean, so I think this, similar, but, to the most part, we can definitely move forward and figure this out. Okay. Mr. Waltz, any more people want to address the TC?
I believe that's everyone, guys. I got no more hands raised.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, we'll close our public
There
session.
you go. Maybe we can be committee guys.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
No.
I'm going to now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night.